everyone, we're here today at SmugMug with Trey Ratcliff. Trey has been a SmugMug customer for many years and he's a really good friend of ours. You may know him as the travel photographer behind StuckInCustoms.com, which is the world's #1 travel photography site. Trey is really awesome because he takes gorgeous photos, but he also shares the stories behind how he gets each of his photos every day on Stuck in Customs. So that sharing and that generosity has allowed him to get 10 million followers worldwide on the world's biggest social networks. So we're really happy to have Trey here today, and I'll let him take it from here.
Thank you. Well, today I'll tell you a story. Actually, I'll tell you a series of stories about how I started out. I was born blind in one eye. I still only see out of my left eye. And then how I ended up with all these nice things that Catherine said. How did I start out as a little boy crawling across the shag carpet at home looking for my mom? How did it go from that to this? And it's not just me up here. There's a whole team that helps me out at Stuck in Customs. We have about a dozen people, full-time and part-time, and I really appreciate them. So I'm just really the guy that takes the photos and does the post-processing, but I owe a lot to the team as well. But how did all this come to be? What are the little stories that made all this come to fruition? Today I'll tell you these, and probably the most important thing is, how did I live in the now to eventuate all of this? Okay, so to help me tell these stories, I need your help. I have a volunteer. Catherine was nice enough to volunteer. She is holding a die, and she will roll that die, and it will determine which story I tell from the early childhood portion of my life. Okay, so this is option number 1, staring at my Atari 2600. Option 2, failed eye surgeries. Option 3, the little person and Jabba the Hutt's tail. Story number 4, brain issues. Story number 5, Lego architecture. Or will you hear story number 6, traumatic T-ball? Okay.
Story number 3.
Oh, okay. The little person and Jabba the Hutt's tail. Okay, this is a good one. So while I tell the story, you'll see a few pictures of me as a kid, and then some photos I've taken as a grown-up, which I guess I am now. So I remember back in 1977, Star Wars came out, and I was 6 years old. I know you guys are doing the math. I'll do it for you. I'm now 41 years old. I know it's unbelievable because I look so young and fresh, but it's true. And so I remember going to the movie theater with my dad in Texas, a great big, wonderfully air-conditioned movie theater, and I sat there and I was just amazed at what I saw in Star Wars when little Princess Leia's ship was being chased by that Imperial cruiser. I'll never forget it. It totally set my dreams afire. And not just that, man can go into space and do all these crazy things, but that George Lucas, who I didn't really know at the time, I've since, come to appreciate all this stuff he did, at least in the early years, that he actually made something out of nothing, right? There was nothing really before Star Wars, and he came and just created this thing and amazed the world with it, and amazed me and filled me with dreams and desires and what can be. So that feeling of amazement, I've never really lost it, and it's always very, very close at hand. And I still feel it all the time when I look at other people's photos, or I look at great art, or I see new movies. It brings up that wellspring of awe. And that is when I first felt it back in the day. So fast forward 20 years, he released another set of movies, okay? And I remember that my dad had taken me, and so I was going to take him to the premiere of the new Star Wars movie, Episode 1. And this is back when we were all really excited about it before we knew it totally sucked. So I was super excited about the new Star Wars movie, just like everybody was. And so I thought, I've got to go see it right away. I'm a big, like, first night, go to the movies guy, get really into it. So I had to get early tickets, and I found there was this charity auction in Dallas. And you could bid on the charity, and if you won, you could go to the premiere a day early with one of the original stars from the original Star Wars movie. Okay, and they didn't really have the best group of stars there. Like top billing, the guy who went for the most was Billy D. Williams, you know, Lando Calrissian. And so he was the top one. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I just wanted to go as cheaply as possible to get my dad and I into the movie. So I bid the lowest possible amount. I bid like $30. And so the guy that I got was the little person that played Jabba the Hutt's tail. And he got inside the tail and he would like wiggle, or whenever Jabba got agitated about something, like when Han was misbehaving, the tail would jiggle. There's a guy in there, and this is the guy that I went with. And so it was me, my dad, and this little person, and we were all in this limo going together. It was totally surreal the whole time. And he was actually, I think, pretty aghast at the whole thing, because he's actually like this Royal Shakespearean trained actor, and it was like beneath him to play Jabba the Hutt's tail. But he was doing it for charity, so it was all in good fun. I remember he sat by me the whole movie, and there was always trouble with the seat kind of collapsing, and I got him a drink, but it was too big, and he was always going to the bathroom. And anyway, I remember all these things, and it reminds me of, like, you know, when you're a kid, you have good things and bad things that happen to you. Actually, mostly it's bad things. It's mostly traumatic things. She happened to roll the die. This is a good story for me. There's plenty of traumatic things that affect you. And actually, I think as a kid, it doesn't matter if good things or bad things happen to you, because whatever happens, you just get wired up differently. And I know that I got wired up differently from many different aspects of my life, mostly traumatic bad things that happened to me, but also from these occasional good things that gave me a good view of the world. And you don't want to be normal. You don't really want to have a normal childhood. You don't want to be normal in high school. You want to be different. You want to have that different wiring that makes you see things in a unique way. So that's something that I started with at an early age, and I'm happy for it. Okay, time for the next set of stories. This is the next phase in my life. Let's see what our options are. Part 2, teenage trauma. Okay. Story 1, Catholic school girls. Don't shake your head. Okay. Story 2. No audience choosing. It's random. Okay. Option 2, the awkward dance. Option 3, learning empathy. Story number 4, raised by my mom and sister. Story number 5, Austin Powers and Calculus 2. And story 6, nervous breakdown. You can see that there is a nun involved with that story. 6, okay. Well, you guys will be happy. This is loosely related to the Catholic girls story. Okay. By the way, what is it about, the Catholics, and, if they're so against premarital sex, why did they make the school uniforms look like that? So I went to this Jesuit school, the Jesuit all-boy Catholic school, okay? And which was actually really good, because you didn't have girls to distract you and whatnot. You could focus on your studies. But down the road was the mysterious all-girl school. It was Ursuline. And you never knew what kind of wonderful mysteries awaited over there. And, I was, like everybody is sort of clueless in high school, right? And I was no different. And I ended up finally getting some semblance of a girlfriend, I suppose. I won't say her name because it's so easy to find people nowadays. I'll call her Chastity, okay? And so Chastity, she had a French last name. So she sort of had this double thing going on, this double Venn diagram of being Catholic and French, which means exotic, or you never knew what was going to happen. And I remember she had these big blue, kind of watery eyes, like children in a French school book. And so we started dating and whatever that means in high school. And nothing ever really happened. I didn't do anything wrong the whole time. It went on for about, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. And then one night at home, I got a call. And it was from the head mistress of Ursuline. She's the head nun. And she called me. She goes, are you Trey Ratcliff? I said, yeah. She goes, are you dating Chastity? And I said, I guess, yeah. She goes, well, I want you to know that she had a nervous breakdown. I said, oh, you know what happened? And she goes, well, you can't do anything about it now. You've done enough. And then she like hung up. I thought, oh gosh, I thought I'd be like in huge trouble. I was sure she was going to call my school and get me in a ton of trouble. And then like the next day I went to school and I was like petrified. I was looking at all the other teachers. They would just give me these 1,000-yard stares, and I just assumed that everyone else knew what was going on, and I was mortified and just dying the whole time. And I felt bad because I didn't really even know what I did. It actually wasn't my fault. There was something imbalanced with her. But I remember this feeling, and it was just about that time that I figured out something. Because I had seen this pattern of people around me. I'm thinking they're thinking one thing, but they're thinking something else entirely. And this pattern finally crystallized at that point. You know that feeling when you walk into a room in high school, or you go into a dance or something, and you just assume that everyone else in the room knows what's going on except for you, and you're doing your best just to fit in. But now we look back on high school and we think, you know, nobody knew what was going on. We were all clueless kids at the time. And still, as a grown-up, you still face this, don't you? Occasionally you walk into a room, or maybe you show up at a photo walk and everyone's got their cameras, or you show up for a 5K and everyone's warming up. You just assume that everyone else here knows what's going on except for you. Well, I'm here to tell you it's no different than high school. Everybody is figuring it out. So at that point, back then, I stopped thinking about what other people were thinking about. It was a waste of my brain cycles to be worried about what the group was thinking. And I started doing whatever the heck I wanted right away, independent of the group. So that was a nice little, some foresight I had back in the day. Okay, part 3. Am I a grown-up yet? Okay, story 1, on stage with Captain Picard. Story 2, the mansion at CNN. Story 3, the next nuclear power plant. Story number 4, writing a rejected novel. Story number 5, sprained ankle with my dad. And story number 6, stuck in the wrong life, level 3.
Number 5.
5. Oh, sprained ankle with my dad. So I had graduated from college. I studied computer science and math, and I went into sort of a technology career. Okay, I worked for Anderson Consulting, which is now called Accenture, and we went and did several different technology implementations all around the world. And I learned a lot about the way businesses work on the inside, how to re-engineer businesses, this sort of stuff. And during this time, you know, you're changing apartments all the time, and you're always thinking about what's going to be happening next. And during one of my apartment changes, I was there in another part of Dallas called Valley Ranch. It's over near where the Cowboys practice. Just another miscellaneous apartment that I moved into. And my dad had come over, and we were going to go over to the little apartment complex gym and work out, you know, the routine. And so we're walking across the parking lot together, and I fell off the curb and I sprained my ankle. I sprained it really bad. I've always had bad ankles, but man, I got it good. And I don't know if you've ever had like a really bad sprained ankle, but it's like one of the most painful things. It's even worse than a break. It is just, it knocks you out. And I passed out there on the curb for a while. And, you know, looking back on it now, that's actually one of the only pure memories I have from that whole period of my life. I have a few others, But it strikes me that during this period of my life where I was working and always thinking about what's going to happen next and what my next client was going to be, or where I was going to move next, or what my next car was going to be, or you're always thinking about what's next. You're never really living in the now. And those moments that stick with you are those extreme emotional or painful or good times, which are really quite rare, frankly. And now, really, thanks to photography and art, I have so many nows that I live in. And I think anyone that's into photography, you know what I mean. You are really fully focused on the moment that's right in front of you. And I remember coming up off that curb where I had passed out for a while, and my dad had sat there beside me, and he didn't say anything. He was just there with me, and I thought that was kind of nice. And I'm sad because I feel like I missed a lot of memories, that they're just gone. They just kind of go into the ether because I was way too busy thinking about what's going to happen next and not really living in the now. And I compared that to my most recent, 5 or 6 years since I've been into photography, and now I have so many more tangible living moments, because something about the art of photography makes you fully live and fully aware of what's right in front of you all the time. Okay, so let's jump to the next set. Here we go. This is last part 4 of a 4-part story, Into the Now. Okay, don't roll yet. Let's see what we have. Making photographer enemies. Story number 2, Trey in the mirror. Story number 3, the danger of peers. Story number 4, moved at the Met. Story number 5, proactive midlife crisis in New Zealand. And story number 6, discovery of art late in life. Okay, Catherine, roll it. 6. Discovery of art late in life. Okay. So it was my mid-30s when I really got into photography and art. And it strikes me as this is actually a really strange time to get into it. And unexpectedly, I had been preparing my whole life for this. Since I was born and I can only see in 2 dimensions, it makes everything like a photo all the time to me. I never really realized it, but I'm always composing things. They always fall to proportions of 5. And then all the other random stumbling I had done through my life, like stumbling through technology consulting, a life that I kind of liked but was sort of a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. But I did kind of learn the way businesses work, and I had started a few companies, so I understood entrepreneurism and what worked and what doesn't. And I worked with lots of teams, and I learned all that. So by the time I decided to get started with my photography life, I had done all these crazy stumbles which are totally disconnected, didn't appear to have any kind of coherent meaning, until this whole thing crystallized. And it just came together and naturally evolved. So something else has become clear to me since I've just moved to New Zealand. And I'm not anti-US or anything at all. I was very happy with my life. I used to live in Austin, Texas. But something very clear happened to me when I moved over there, when I got a little bit of a different perspective. It's sort of a parallel universe, and I can kind of see things in a different way. And even when I occasionally travel back here, I see this. There's sort of an obsession with finding happiness here. You see it on Oprah or Ellen. You see it on books in the airport, all about finding happiness. And I think this is a fool's errand. It's sort of a misguided quest. I think that really life is about finding meaning, having as many meaningful moments in your life as possible. And when you're in the middle of a meaningful moment, your guard drops down, and then happiness sneaks in. I've noticed this, and maybe you have too. Maybe you're walking across a field, or you're having a personal moment and something meaningful is happening, your guard is down, and all of a sudden you say, oh my gosh, I'm happy. I didn't know it. It just pops in there. And I think that photography and art has really enhanced this. I have no doubt about it, because the more I take photos, the more I live in the now, and the more I can see these beautiful little truths unfolding around me. Maybe you know what I mean. And there are these meaningful moments. And as I take these things in, I have sort of a peace with the universe. I feel like I'm at flow with the universe. And then happiness just sneaks in like a wonderful uninvited guest. And it feels right, and it feels proper. It's been really quite amazing. So just like we've been randomly rolling the dice here, life really is sort of like this random collection of events, isn't it? Some of these events you don't have any control over, and you just got to go with the flow. Some of the events you do have control over, and you can bend them to your will. It doesn't matter what event you happen to be in the middle of, or where you are on your own individual path, on your own journey. All that matters is that you're focusing on what is right there in front of you. You're fully living in the now. And I'll never forget it. When I was a little boy and I was crawling through that carpet and I was looking for my mom, I felt sad, and I looked down and I could feel the long fibers going through my fingers. And I was fully focused on that moment. I was in that now. And the more you fully focus on what's in front of you, whether it's Photoshop or washing the dishes or talking to a friend, the more you live in that now, the more everything makes sense. The more you will feel the universe naturally unfold for you the way it's supposed to. All right, well, thank you for your time.